What is buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Hey there, buffer timers. We're here again on Sunday. We're going to talk a little TOS, a taste of Armageddon. Got a little news, but before we even get into that, let's go around clockwise and introduce each other. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself instead. I am Scott of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
Howdy, Robbie Sherman of Conversations with Robbie Sherman.
That was actually coming well.
My name is Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
As do we all. I guess before we get going, there's a little bit of news. Couple of things. Paramount might get bought. There is a serious offer on the table by the Apollo Venture Capital Group for $11 billion. Scott, what was your take when I put that in our chat?
You really want me to? Okay.
Yeah, because I like what you said.
Yeah, it was the same reaction I had years ago when Dodge was using the Stone Temple Pilots song Interstate Love Song in one of their commercials. I was just like, well, fuck everything forever. I'm sorry, I've just never seen anything really good come out of a venture capital group.
Yeah.
I'm sure other people may see it the other way, but yeah, I'm pretty much done with big business lately.
Have you seen their portfolio, though? We don't know. We don't know.
That's what it is.
I mean,
portfolio.
They all pretty much just do the same thing, though. Buy it up, cut as many positions as possible, and hope for the best.
Sometimes make stuff and don't release it. Looking at you, Zaslav.
Life truly is a hurricane in Duckburg.
Yeah, no word on whether it's been accepted yet or whether Paramount will take it. We don't really know how bad their position is right now. There's a lot of rumors flying about all of the major studios, so this is a bit more than a rumor, but we'll see what happens. The other thing is that weirdly, apparently Prodigy Season 2 has dropped in France just out of the blue, out of nowhere. Nobody really expected it, but it hasn't been retracted. So, great question on when we're going to get it here anywhere else around the world.
And definitely not an endorsement of VPN. VPN.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's not on a streaming service. It's not on like French Netflix like you would think. It was some channel must have gotten the license from Netflix. The way I understood, at least the way I understood it from reading it, is that some channel in France had gotten the rights and they're putting out all of the episodes. So yeah, we'll see where that goes, but I would imagine that if it's in France, it's not long before we get hit. I'm just hoping it's not during disco.
Right.
Or we're going to be doing like 2 streams a week.
I guess that's the strategy because their flagship is having their last season on April 4th. So they don't want to like take the shine off of another show. It's not like RuPaul's Drag Race. Well, they'll have 2 seasons simultaneously going and one is way more, popular. So the other one doesn't get any viewership.
Huh.
Paramount is going to start treating Prodigy like Lupin the Third, where they start putting it out in foreign countries before they actually put it out in the target market.
Good call, Windgrace. All right. I think that's all of the news this week. There was a few more little bits about disco, but next week we are going to be talking all about disco, where we've been, what we need out of season 5, all of the spoilers that we currently know about. We'll get all of that next week. So
I'm trying to catch up. Don't worry.
Oh, that's right. You haven't seen all of disco. You got about a week.
No, I started season 4 the other day. Was so confused. It's been fun.
Oh, yeah. That is not
Wow.
my favorite season. But again, we will get into all kinds of disco next week. This was, by the way, this was Robbie's topic. He's just he's been having a little trouble with the with some lag. So I guess I'm gonna ask the questions today. So let's flip over to that taste of Armageddon. Do you taste it? No.
Tastes like chicken.
So what happens to people when they don't report for disintegration duty?
Kind of makes you wonder if they
guess
have like.
just live. Yeah, I was thinking about this. Like, with a society so neutered that they haven't had an actual war in 500 years, how easy is it to get away with not going to the disintegrator? Do they underreport different types of people who didn't go to the disintegrator? Does this create weird fluctuations in their numbers? There's a rich second life going on in this episode with all the stuff they never talk about. It's so
Yeah,
there's
something really suspicious about the way that the king of the planet, whatever this guy's name is,
Anon.
yes,
Anon.
Anon, and he said, "My wife was tragically killed." Just like, did you pick her to go into the bucket or what?
Yeah, just
Like,
we were literally in the same room at the time, but somehow only she got hurt.
Yeah.
They probably have propaganda films about him taking his wife to the disintegrator. You know, like beautiful love stories surrounding his wife to the disintegrator and having to watch her disappear when the door comes back around.
I'm sorry. Blame the algorithm. Goodbye, my love.
It's interesting how they're targeting only civilians too. It's not this guy that's in danger. He just gets to watch little lights come up on the map, and it's like, well, everybody in that area is gonna go. Not me though. Definitely not me. Like, so I think I think they would sort of. They apparently have this like advanced civilization or whatever,
so they say.
But they don't have space travel. So I would think they would have like a similar AD system to ours, and they would track people that way. So it's either you get off the planet or you're toast. And since they don't, that's why they don't have space travel, so that people can't escape.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good call.
Plus, they don't want people spreading the culture out. They want to keep that culture nice and tidy at home. They don't want other people taking their culture. That's why they have the war, damn it.
What is this war? I mean, I didn't even come up with an actual question here on the list about this, but what is the point of this war? I mean, every war has some degree of like what you're going to get out of it and what will end it. And there are some decisive things that just don't make any sense here for me.
I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out at all. And I watched this episode at least 4 times since yesterday, and I listened to it today, and I was like, I don't know what they're actually, like, what the agreement is that led them to playing this form of suicide Tetris or whatever you call this, like, game they're doing. I don't understand, like, why they're even at war. And I think it's been so long that they themselves cannot even comprehend why they're at war. They're just trapped in an emotional catharsis, like, constantly, where they have to be part of this culture. Like, they've been raised up for 500 years, multiple generation after multiple generation, perpetuating this war without actually understanding why it is, because they never explain what the war is about.
They just say, we've been doing it for half a century. That's their
5
argument.
centuries. It's been 500 years.
Half a millennium. That's it. That's their big like gotcha. We've been doing it for a really long time. And it's like a lot of human beings have justified doing stupid shit for a really long time. That doesn't mean it's like a good idea. You know, we've had certain institutions in this country that went on for a very long time and in some forms still exist. But does that make it a good idea? No, it makes it effective for certain people, and then they propagandize it by saying it's a good idea. So they just there's not a lot of thought to it. Like I think Robbie, you mentioned a video earlier that you linked to it, and you know, it's just like their logic is one layer deep. It's like, well, this is the best, this is the best option out of other ones, but you could also just not be at war. You could simply be at peace. There's really nothing. And I think it's also like pointing out the arbitrary nature of combat in general. It's like there may be a goal in mind, but the goal is made up, like the goalposts are sort of made up too. It's like this border, that was made up. The difference between these two people, that's made up. So yeah.
Right, but there's always something to gain, at least in that. What does anybody gain from this like random, other than, oh, this is a more civilized war? Well, if we must war, then let's war like this. But what is to be gained by either side? Every war has had something to gain, and there's not here.
Yeah, the only motivation they see is preservation of their culture. But you know, you can do that by not warring.
Go ahead, Robbie.
No one ever even explains what makes their culture special. They just go on and on about how they're retaining their culture, but they don't show us examples of the culture. We don't hear them talk about great authors in their culture. We don't hear them talk about great artists of their culture. Like, we have no examples of what makes their culture worth preserving in a war for 500 years. That isn't even a real war. It's just people killing themselves for a computer.
Like, it's so, because when you dig any deeper, it doesn't make any sense, because there's nothing culturally that's worth killing people in your own country for. Like, oh, these shoes are great, let's shoot my neighbor. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
No, that doesn't make sense.
June Kuhn did massive rewrites on this, and I think a lot of the questions that are in the air from the context they created, he kind of had to work into being ambiguously interesting in the least, because I think the original 9 drafts, like they didn't give you enough like to actually go on as compelling dramas. So I think you were left with a whole ton of like even less context than what's happening here. And I think he had to like bring in a lot of punchy lines to create dynamic entertainment for this and create little emotional scenes that propels it forward as a story, because it's pretty thin as a story premise.
Yeah, like this is Alien allegory to the max, where we just have a premise. We use Alien as a premise of a different example of how culture is, you know, how it's organized and how society is organized. So it's a hypothetical situation just sort of superimposed on these people, and they didn't really develop it much further. But I think that's purposeful, because when you really like there may be a goal in mind, but is it like worth? Is it really worth this amount of effort and this amount of murder? Is anything worth this amount of murder? No.
So that kind of brings me to a question about Spock. In this says at one point that the method of war is somewhat logical. Do you think it actually is?
That's a question that people have been trying to span for like decades, millennia. Like, I guess that really depends on who you want to side with and the winners and losers of history. Like, I personally don't ever think that a lot of wars are justified. I think they're created by a rich elite. If you look at history, and that rich elite has everything to gain from the war over the actual people that are fighting it, and there's so many books that you can look at and so many ways you can interpret history on that level.
Because who's really benefiting here? And that is the manufacturers of those computers, the maintainers of those computers. If there's no seeming goal to having just perpetual war, the war machine itself is the benefactor.
I wonder what kind of like position in society those people hold, the people who can work on computers. I wonder if they're treated like shaman or holy men, and like only they are allowed to have the special knowledge because they can wield the responsibility of the suicide computers. Like, I think it's a little. Yeah, I think it's a little shrouded in mystery that they don't explain all that stuff. And when we
dying for it.
Computers,
and they have to constantly convince these people that this is the only method of conflict resolution. There is no other way, no diplomacy, no discussion, no open channel that they could have. There's no meeting of the minds they could have. They couldn't possibly have a discussion. It's just, we got to blow each other up for forever, and that's just it. End of story.
Yeah, when Spock first said it, I was like, well, I guess there is, like Spock puts it, there is some logic to it. Like, if you must war, well, I guess do it so that we don't actually destroy everything in the process.
I think
then I think just a little bit more about how, there's just nobody's gaining anything from this war. Why? It doesn't make there is no logic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like, and that's an argument to say that logic isn't the end all be all for reasoning of, you can't, like, logically justifying murder can only go so far. Like, it's just that skin deep. Like, It's us versus them, and that's it. We can only think that deeply, because if we pick it apart any more than that, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I also think Spock is like, I think he's having fun toying with the idea that it's a necessary thing more than he's accepting that it's a necessary thing. I think as a Vulcan, he likes looking at Earth culture as more of a scientific study. Why do we allow cultures and their emotions to run rampant in this way? And if they are to do this, what is the most logical way for them to do this? So the logic behind this will become the logic behind increasing drone attacks as years go on with our current technology. I think that's part of what makes this episode haunting too, is that it's politics are made in certain ways that are frustrating on a narrative level, but there's still a meat in there that we're still dealing with some of the ramifications of the ideals going on in this episode, particularly since video games have become so lifelike and people are so predisposed not to be fazed by atrocity in the world due to the internet and video games on certain levels. Just regular movies and television media in general has a high problem.
Lost like almost everything you said, Robbie. Sorry.
Yeah.
You are lagging really hard, dude.
I
Something about video games and modern technology. That was about all I got.
Oh, well.
So I'll move on to the next question that we had. Is Starfleet's mission in this episode, as stated by Mr. Fox, more of a political power move than an attempt to save lives?
Because what does the Federation get out of this either? Like, what do they get out of sticking their nose in somebody else's business?
Dude, you got a Dell. Dell got a Dell.
Hey, Del. Yeah, it took me like this rewatch to realize what their actual agenda was. Something about it's like just establishing a presence in not necessarily the system, but like this whole star cluster.
A port, perhaps?
Yes.
So it's like, wow, we get to be the saviors of this thing just happening to have a center of commerce, possibly. That's nothing like anything that's going on right now at all.
But yeah, I feel like his whole thing is like, yeah, we can save all these people from dying. Like, you don't know how they're dying. You got to fix the underlying problem first.
Mm-hmm.
They're dying because a computer says so.
Right.
Am I coming in better now?
For now.
Surprisingly, yes.
Okay. Wonderful.
You keep coming in and out anyway, so it is what it is. We understand. Yeah, so following up on that, and yeah, I think it's definitely a power grab. It's all about him. He's just trying to ingratiate himself through this episode. Oh, hey, Gannon, I was really hoping you would show up and like talk how great this episode is, because I know you love it.
Gas. I mean, that is true. My covered armchair.
But building off the thing with the ambassador, if a code 7 means no contact under any circumstances, doesn't that override the whims of this ambassador?
Apparently not. Just
there are like a couple, like, it's funny that this is followed up by like this episode has, what the hell is the name of the episode that comes after this one?
ooh.
The one before is Space Seed. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds right. I can tell you in just a second. This Side of Paradise. You're one of your
Okay.
favorite episodes, Vanessa.
Yes.
That's
Yes,
the next one.
and there's a similar thing where it's like there's no reason for them to even go to this planet at all, because there's these like radiating beams of light that kill everybody, and it's like they just sort of skip over that in a similar way. Yes,
Yeah,
I love that
Dell's got it.
message. You got to do it. You got to do it for real. You can't just do the simulated stuff.
Yeah, but now thinking about it, kind of feel like Ambassador Fox here kind of mirrors Anon. Like,
Mhm.
because it's like, okay, there's this code that tells me I can't do this. I'm going to do it anyway. The people are telling us, do not beam down to our planet. You're going anyway. And on the other side, you got Anon like, yeah, we're going to have this war no matter what. Why? Oh, just because we have for, 5 centuries. We're just going to keep it going.
Oh, Gannon. Oh, Dip.
Hey, get it.
Oh.
I guess I just wanted to come in because I joined a little bit late, but this episode is amazing.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorites of all time.
Okay.
I love the original series so much, and if I go through and rewatch the original series, I always rewatch this one. I love rewatching the Corbinite maneuver. This episode's so good for a lot of reasons. Scotty is one of the best performances in his entire 3-season career. He's a really great commander, and he takes charge.
I'll give
and
you that. That is for sure.
He does risk his entire career. And I think this might be, I didn't look at the episode list, but this might be the first time that we do see a character that shows how fraudulent the hierarchy system in the United Federation of Planets is, not Starfleet, because you have people who work for the UFP who just have high ranks that for some reason, this is a huge plot hole, but there's no reason that a bozo like this should be able to command one of the, what are there, 12 or 13 Constitution classes. This guy is like the shining star of the fleet. I don't know if they've canonically said that it's the flagship yet. I'm pretty sure they do it by season 2. But Captain Kirk is one of the 12 most competent commanders or 13, I don't remember which, in the entire organization. There's no reason this bozo should be able to tell him what to do, but he does because, there's a lot of instances in this we run into later, especially in the TNG.
It's just in TOS. Every single person that is above the rank of captain or like mixed rank, because the ambassador, he's not even technically part of the Starfleet command structure. He just has the power to take over.
Mm-hmm.
But how many times, and this was even one of our questions, how many times in TOS does one of these people come and just fuck everything up because they know better?
Can think of at least one.
The other time I remember it was another captain doing it. Captain, what was his name? Is Gary something? He was the one who was traumatized after his entire ship and crew were eaten in the Doomsday
Commodore
machine.
Decker.
Yeah, Decker.
And he's above.
He's a Commodore.
Captain. He's a Commodore.
Yeah, that's true. And he just kind of took over Kirk's ship.
You got the Supreme High Command, whatever that bullshit title that you never hear again. Yes, Galactic High Commissioner. He comes in and tries to do it. And there's one more dude when they end up going across through the neutral zone, and it was another Commodore, and I can't remember his name. He's an idiot. He's like Edward.
Oh yeah, is that when Captain Kirk was sick?
Deadly Years.
Yes. Yep. That one.
That was the.
That was one of my favorite.
Was that Journey to Babel? That was Deadly Years. He's right. It was Deadly Years when he was old.
Mm-hmm.
I can't forget it all, Del. I mean, yeah, what Gannon said, that is actually the best part of the episode. Scotty in the big chair, this is one of his best episodes.
It is the most entertaining part.
Rocks.
I love when he says, "Have a bonny trip, Captain." He has this smirk on his face. What's going on? Are you is the wall going to turn around and you're going to start a party? What's happening?
I have a side note to this that I can't let go. Do you think Kirk is pissed at Scotty later for messing with his ass groove in the chair? He spends a moment working on the ass groove, and then Scotty just sits down in there and messes it all up. He could have commanded standing up. He didn't have to do that.
That chair is Scotty's ass groove. Because as I had challenged Del to a while ago, and we never actually came around to talking about it more, but he even found that my theory holds some water, that Scotty is actually in command more in TOS than Kirk is. Kirk is always on a planet or a space station or anywhere but the fucking bridge.
That's fair.
It's the most entertaining part of the episode, the back and forth between Anon 7 and Scotty, how Anon is trying to manipulate the ship, how he copies Captain Kirk's voice, he lies, tries to get them down. And it just shows how competent Scotty is. He's an experienced dude. He's really good when the time comes to step up. The thing is that you can pick apart the legitimacy of a planet where they do kill their citizens like this, but the episode is one of the most entertaining, I think, in the 3 seasons. You literally get to see Spock and them create a little movement and go around destroying these chambers and exploding them, and that's action-packed for the original series. Pretty good.
Well, I say it's more than... Go ahead, Robbie.
I just wanted to say, I think it's a good B in the middle of a couple of A's.
I'll give it that it's better than most of the 3rd season. I don't know about all 3 seasons, but
that's low bar.
It is. It really is.
Do we ever see Spock do that mind control thing?
Yeah, they do it in the episode
2 other times.
Yeah, at least in that one,
okay.
When the ship is taken over by the one race of people. What are they called? The Kelvins.
Yeah,
from Andromeda.
Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the other time, but I just remember the Kelvin episode time.
The other one is the Omega Glory, when they're in jail there, where Captain Tracy has taken over that one.
Oh, gotcha.
Put in jail.
I love that episode so much. That might be a top 5 for me.
Wow.
I love the Omega Glory so fucking much. I love it.
Wow, you must be the youngest person I've ever met that really, really enjoys TOS.
It's so good and entertaining.
Oh my goodness.
How old are you, Gannon?
I'm 23.
23.
But I started the first episode of Star Trek I ever watched that convinced me to watch the series, and I watched it in order because I always have to watch things from start to finish the way they were chronologically produced. And I watched Devil in the Dark was the first episode I've ever seen, and that episode's goofy as shit.
Yes, it is.
I don't think I like that episode a lot, but it's pretty goofy.
So you like this one better than Devil?
Oh, for sure. The Devil in the Dark is
Okay.
probably towards the bottom of my list for entertainment value. The funniest part about that episode is that they're chasing around like somebody's puked up Taco Bell that travels through the walls.
Oh boy.
But no, quick comment. The Omega Glory, that is like a top 5 episode for me, and it's so entertaining because when I first watched the TOS, I looked up so much to Starfleet captains. They held them on such a pedestal of competence. They're almost like these superhuman beings who could escape anything. And it was the first time where I saw them pit 2 against each other in like a mortal combat. It was really entertaining to me.
Basically, any TOS episode that uses the fight music is not for me.
I love when they're fighting. That's my favorite part in this episode is when Captain Kirk just like hops out of the chair and he's like, "Give me your gun," and then he like waves off 3 other grown men and he's like, "Get across towards the wall." It's the silliest looking thing ever, but it's impressive how Captain Kirk is able to deal with 4 other grown guards like that.
Well, I mean, it's not hard for these guys, and I guess this will, I'll lead this into a question. Because of those stupid, it's not even pants. They have a pant and a sash connected. Is this the worst wardrobing in all of Star Trek?
Can you put it on the screen so we can see it?
Yep, I sure will.
It's not the worst, but the hats are the worst part.
They are definitely bad,
Look
but
like-
if you get this in HD, you can even see that the sashes and stuff, they're just rough cut. Nothing's hemmed. Like somebody just took minutes throwing this stuff together.
Love the turtlenecks too. Really gives it that beatnik vibe.
hats. Do you know
I
what they
think it's clear to me that the Edo from TNG are the worst costumes in all of Trek. It's just 2 triangles connected in the middle, and yes, best Trek film ever. Yeah, the Edo. They look like they're just about to come apart with one wrong move. Just
You can throw in a
These
vote for the Capellans from Friday's Child.
Oh god, yeah, the fucking
Yeah.
Nordic pony statues.
But
these
like,
are the results of people that were too old to experience the Beat generation and are now in the middle of the hippie generation, and they are just weirded out by it all. So they're coming up with the strangest things that are just not like the actual hippie clothing. Like they're far more abstract and strange than actual hippie stuff that was going around at the time. And I love the hat so much because it has no purposeful function. Like they never explain what it does or anything. Like maybe it's there to signify that it's a guard, but I think we even see other guards running around without those hats. So I don't think the hats matter all that much on a functional level.
and they come in different types too. So there's
Yeah.
some rhyme and reason to their color scheme. I just think they look like Louis Vuitton bags stretched over somebody's head.
I thought they looked like the end of a pencil when a kid's been chewing on the metal part so much that like the eraser comes out and then you just have up left. It kind of looks like that to me.
You notice that the one dude with the golden hat is the one that like counts the dead. I wonder if he's the one that just kind of comes up with, all right, everybody from A block to C block, you're dead today.
Say what you want about the hats, but I bet they were ahead of their time. You know, I bet Matthew Lillard wore something like that in the late 90s. Just hanging out, going around.
There have definitely been people who've gotten a parking ticket and like a death ticket in the same day on the society. And it's just like the
It's
government.
just not my day.
It's like kicking them when they're down and spitting on them and throwing dirt in their face.
Good. This is better. I'm glad they called me in for this. Finally, don't have to do this anymore.
Never
Some
getting that
guys
parking ticket paid now.
No, well,
That's going to
Yeah.
collections.
Yeah, there's not enough
Go ahead.
tax base left to develop a society.
it's kind of funny you don't see a subculture on this world of people who are like, just to hell with our culture. We're gonna do whatever we want. We could be randomly selected to die tomorrow.
That's a good
I wa-
point.
Something that I really do like about this episode too, just because I'm a Captain Kirk freak. I love Captain Kirk. It's a really good performance by Kirk. The only thing
Yeah,
that's a
not
little
bad.
bit of a plot hole for me is how I wish there would have been a little bit of dialogue at the end of the episode explaining that they were really just bluffing about blowing up the planet, but really there's dialogue to imply that no, we were really going to blow up your fucking planet if you didn't give us Captain Kirk back. Like, we were prepared to do that, which, is not, accurate to what Starfleet does. They're not there to blow up the planet. If anything, they just want to get their people back.
Yeah, I'd really like to know more about General Order 24. I at first I thought, and it still may be, that Kirk was just bluffing. There is no General Order 24. He's just fucking with them, but maybe there is.
I feel like
I
what
love.
was that one? Did Kirk try to do that, something like that, in Bread and Circuses, didn't he? Because the proconsul was like, call your men down here, and he's like, Scotty, get out of here, General Order something or other. Maybe I'm remembering wrong.
No, it has happened before. You're right. It's happened in another episode where he was bluffing, but this time around, they don't really ever make a comment to make it seem like that was just a bluff. Because if you're going to just the whole person whose responsibility this should fall upon is, of course, Ambassador Fox. Like, he's the person who got them all in this situation, but at the same time, the Enterprise is not more valuable than the life of an entire planet. That's like the act of a warmongering Voyager, like the alternate Voyager from the alternate history. Like, that's something they would do, is blow up an entire fucking planet. It's just not something that Starfleet would ever do. And I know this is early TOS, and that's like the big plot hole for me.
Watching it this time, the intro bits where they're explaining what's happening, it came off more like they're missionaries. And they're going forth to preach the good word of the Federation. And apparently Fox won't take fucking no for an answer.
There might be a good in-universe reason for this. Like, remember in Strange New Worlds when, towards the end of the season, Pike had to convince that one very crucial society who was like on a point in space between the Klingons and the United Federation of Planets. Like, maybe they really do need to get this part of space within the Federation's belt. Maybe it's that important.
I really feel like Fox has his own priorities in mind, the way he's acting, because he's very didactic and angry about everything, and it's almost as if he's forcing them into this position, and he keeps pushing them into this more and more precarious position as a ship, and everyone around him kind of seems to know better. I feel like this whole thing is about him trying to create a political power play that he can show to Starfleet and use as a way to rise up in the ranks.
Because it's kind of an easy dunk. Because there's no reason for them to be doing this anyway. So all it needs is someone to say, hey, this is stupid. Just because you've been doing something a long time doesn't mean it's a good idea. And then they stop. And that's an easy win. And so this guy creates a diplomatic situation that's peaceable rather simply. And yeah, that would definitely raise his profile.
The way Kirk acts in this, I feel like he is complicit on the sly, because he is so smug through the whole damn episode. And you're right, Gannon, it's a great performance. It perfectly plays to all of William Shatner's strengths, but some of William Shatner's strengths are being kind of a con man and, a charmer. So I also think maybe Kirk has some info that everybody else doesn't, and he's getting off in a sort of Bugs Bunny way, being a chaos agent on this planet.
I went and I rewatched the episode recently, and the dialogue is very good. This episode really reminds me a lot of Half a Life from the TNG, because that's another society where
Okay.
instead of
Yep.
doing what's traditional and allowing our old to die deaths that they choose to die, whether it be very painful, excruciating deaths, ones where they lose their own sense of self and memories, they would rather just kill their elderly at a certain point and avoid all that and have a more logical, maintained society. From their point of view, it really is like they're saving them from suffering. And there is a certain logic to that. And if you choose to not go and kill yourself, it basically breaks all of society. Because if even one person decides to just leave the planet and go on a starship, it means that their whole society could like fall apart. And also, it's just a terrible thing to do. You're going to be shunned from your family, like Ensign Rowe's character was trying to do his daughter right there in the scene. Kirk has a lot of dialogue where he's like, you guys have made war very refined and very clean to the point where you've forgotten what war actually is. I'm going to show you, I'm going to be ruthless, and with this hand phaser show you just how dirty like just a couple individuals can make your planet. And he
Right.
was there to make them fear war, and ultimately he did fear monger them into talking peace and avoiding it altogether, because from Anon 7's mind and their culture, it's like, we're incapable of peace. We fought this war for hundreds of years and we'll do anything to avoid it. We'll even kill people in a random lottery. Also, there is that society in Strange New Worlds where they were like perfect society, but they had to use a small child to power this
Yes.
machine to have their
Oh,
floating
God,
Bioshock City like function.
that's the
I think
worst
that
new Trek episode for me.
it's not
Period. End of story.
it's not a great episode. I'll be honest. It could have been written a lot better. The premise was cool and shocking, but it just wasn't executed well. I think that is Dustin's opinion of this episode, that it wasn't executed as well as it could have been.
Kind of. I mean, I could say that about most of TOS. Actually, I think this one's probably executed okay, except for the outfits, which are just terrible. Aside from that, I think it's executed all right. It's just the script itself, it's not great. Go ahead, Vanessa.
I just thought that there's just so many parallels that it could have to the Cold War, to the occupation of Gaza. It could have the way that war is presented to us is just this abstract mowing down of numbers of people in a certain area, and we have no real emotional connection to anything, and we're bombarded with this information on a regular basis. So we just become numb to it. Like violence is just
Yes.
sort of normalized.
That's
And
great. Yeah, that's
there's
great.
no other way to solve this issue. We just have to deal with murder on a mass scale. We just have genocide around, and that's just a thing. So I love this episode for being that heavy-handed, because I think Star Trek is best is when they really go in hard with the messaging.
And it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder what the purposing of this continuous war is. Is it like in our modern day where they're basically setting up Gaza as a form of real estate that they're planning on later, that we all know is happening through multiple media sources? Does this society get rid of people so they can repurpose large parts of their culture and recontextualize it into new living forms? Like, those are the unanswered questions this episode leaves, and I'm really glad we got to do it.
I wanted to find out at the end that the other planet that they were with is actually all wiped out, and this is all just computers still just killing this one planet. I think that would have been the best.
That would
possible
actually
end to
be a
this.
good thing, because they never call them. They're like, we have a landline. We never call them at all. And so that would actually make I mean, if this episode was made in the modern day, that would be a way to make it way more interesting. Something else that would be just an interesting extra scene is if they literally showed some of the citizens being abrasive about entering the chamber. Like they only showed them walking into it like lemmings.
Like passively.
Yeah, but if they showed maybe a citizen who was younger, just at least one, just being abrasive about not going in, and then the guard just like shoves her in, and then she gets incinerated. That would have been a cool, more impactful scene, which, you know, the TOS admittedly doesn't really have a lot of stuff like that.
I think in a way the subtlety of that scene is its power, because the idea that these people are so vacuous, you know, they just have no like real fear of it, that one guy is comforting another person and they go into the disintegrator and then the door opens and they're gone. And then that guy just walks in himself. And they say that with almost no words, and like it stuck in my head the more I watched it and the more I thought about it. Like a lot of productions would choose to be very melodramatic about that. And I think playing that subtly is its own unique choice.
They also sorry.
After 500 years, I mean, I guess that's how you grow up. You grow up knowing that this is probably going to be your end, and you just deal with it.
Half a millennium of nationalism being internalized generation after generation, you would just sort of think that's just your duty as a citizen there.
I think it's good character writing on the whole.
So I had looked up a while ago here, and now I'll come back to it. The General Order 24. I didn't realize that's what got Garth the Vizar put in the insane asylum. He ordered a General Order 24.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay. I love that episode too, because it's also another one where they pit captains against each other.
I don't like that one either. I like this one better than I like that one. That one, like it has a ton of cool lore, and I mean, it even set up the controversial fan-made Axanar, but I don't like the episode itself. It just goes nowhere. It's absurdity for the sake of absurdity. And we never come back to the, like, all mental illness is cured forever. We never touch on that again. That's an episode we've got to talk about someday. Whom gods destroy. Yeah, we're getting kind of long in this, and we've still got a bunch of questions. Does Kirk's self-righteousness undermine the narrative power of the themes on display through the episode?
No, I feel like they feed into them perfectly. I feel like that's the core thing that they're trying to drive home, is what Captain Kirk is saying, is that you cannot distance yourself from war. It's also what Vanessa was saying about how unless you have a ballistic missile falling on your head, you usually don't care about war. You're usually just doing everyday things, while war is very much happening and violence happens still, like, every day on our planet. But I mean, it's just like literally what everybody does, I myself included. Unless that stuff affects me directly, I honestly don't think about it too much in my everyday life. It's what these people on Vandekar do. And Captain Kirk driving home, like, oh, that was one thing that was funny. I also wanted to point out, as he said, he's like, what do you think you're going to do? Take this entire planet and change it with a single phaser? He's like, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I don't need the Enterprise to do it. And he did totally need the Enterprise to do it. Like, he got beat up, imprisoned, and he failed at what he said he was going to do. I thought that was funny, but no, I think what Captain Kirk said really was driving home the one point they were trying to illustrate, is that I'm going to make war scary again for you guys.
When I wrote that question last night, I wasn't grasping everything about this episode I wanted to, and I still think like he's a little smug in some ways, but I also think he is right in that if they actually want to engage in war, they shouldn't be hiding behind these computers and expecting their people to die on their own. Like, they should be getting in the muck of it, and they should actually be finding out like the terrors of it. They shouldn't be playing around with the idea while people lose their lives in a passive aggressive manner. It's
Yeah,
very sad.
passive aggressively murdering people is
Yeah, like that's what it is. Like the whole time, it's like, no, you cannot be that way. It's like, well, you never explain why I can't be that way. You never explain why. Like these people never, like they seem to accept everything without explanation simply because they've been told that that's how things are supposed to be from the time they were born. Like at this point, 500 years into this war, I can't imagine hardly anyone truly understands like the beginnings of it and like the actual things that caused it to happen. Because if they did, then they would have gotten rid of it. They wouldn't be continually participating in it.
So that begs another question we had here. After all this time, are they at all genuinely capable of engaging in a physical war after 500 years?
Maybe that's one of the main motivators, because Captain Kirk was like, well, now it looks like you guys are going to war. If I were you, I'd start building bombs. Or you can do another alternative. Maybe the fact that it's been so long is one of the reasons why maybe it was easier to talk peace than to actually, start manufacturing machines of war again.
also I wonder if it's like one of those things where they just are so non-confrontational that instead of discussing anything, having any sort of other alternative, they're too afraid of conceding to the other side, and out of pride, this is just what they're going to continue doing. Just sort of blindly following this ridiculous tradition that makes no sense.
Yeah.
I think they probably do have good like hand-to-hand combat training of some kind. I mean, if they can take down Mr. Kirk with only three men, they must have great hand-to-hand combat training. But I think like the actual like ability to create new weapons and to create strategy in war the way their computers would be probably passed a long time ago.
What I want to know is there's some kind of discontinuity. So, and granted, maybe the sensors just didn't pick it up, but early in the episode from orbit, they say that they don't detect any weapons on the planet, right? And then later, Anon 7 orders them to attack the Enterprise when Scotty lowers the screens. But then it's like, oh, you better build some bombs.
They have like a planetary defense system, and the weapons were a little bit quirky, Dustin. They weren't traditional. They were like sound weapons or something they would describe them as.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how they were able to hide them. They were unconventional, and they could not really get the Enterprise once it was out of range. And I think there was even dialogue to imply that like the only way they could even have a hope to destroying the Enterprise with those weapons is if they caught them by surprise. Because later when Kirk says, oh, I did General Order 7, this planet's going to explode, Anon orders them to just fire out of desperation at the Enterprise. And they're like, oh, it's out of range. We can't do it. Our weapons suck.
The old reliable strategy of going 5 paces to the left.
They knew some maneuvers.
Yeah, I legit missed that.
Yeah,
every
you know
time I
that-
watch this episode, this is like one of the few episodes of Trek that like I can remember it's a Cold War analogy, and then I don't actually remember anything of it. It's not memorable for me. It's not a bad episode either. It's one of those like sleepy time Trek episodes for me.
I love Kirk's speech towards the end. He sounds almost like an interventionist at a drug intervention. Like, all you have to do is not kill today. Just today. You could do anything for 24 hours. Like, it's such a weird statement. Like, it's not, is it really that hard not to kill people? Like, that's on your automatic to-do list. Like,
Don't try killing. Not even once.
Say no to killing.
How about I say no to kill?
Like,
There's a
tonally, there's just like comedic beats in here and there. Like Spock has a line when he sees somebody going into the disintegrator, there's an entrance but no exit. You can go in, but you can't get out. It's like you check in, but they don't
Roaches
check out.
in, they don't check out.
Oh, there's also a line. Scotty was like, after they started firing at the Enterprise, he's like, well, now that the Haggis is on fire, we can do this. And it was ridiculous. Like, even for back then, that's a terrible bar that Scotty just dropped there. Also, this episode does have a really hot background yeoman, which happens every so often.
Yeah.
Yeoman Tamala or whatever. Yeah. Spock's like talking to her. She's super bad. That happens in like once in every 7 TOS episodes. There's like a background, not even a. Oh, they're all yeomans now, aren't they? Yes. They have like all the girl characters be yeomans. We never see like a
Some
a female
of them are lieutenants and stuff.
Okay, but the term ensign doesn't exist right now, or does it?
It does.
Do they ever call a girl ensign in the TOS? Do you think?
Oh,
no, maybe that that Indian helm officer. She may have been an ensign.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay.
Don't quote me on that. She may have been a lieutenant also.
I want to point out the Spock line. I am practicing a peculiar form of diplomacy. That really stuck in my head and made me laugh.
I really liked when they were starting to get along with Mr. Fox. Like, Mr. Fox is like, oh shit, you guys are right. You know, got myself in a little bit of a pickle here. He's like, I haven't been a soldier in a while, but I learned quickly. I started thinking Mr. Fox is kind of valid after that. I liked how they weren't at odds the entire episode. They kind of got along.
He was also wearing green, so definitely a pickle. I like Scotty's line where he says, my type of diplomacy is full phaser banks. I've never heard him sort of just be like, yeah, we could just shoot our way out of this, but you know.
This episode is sort of the canon films of Star Trek episodes. Like big meaty lines with like horrible, incredible intentions behind them that like betray whatever good intentions are supposed to be coming out of this morality play.
I have a question for everyone, I think.
Good.
Okay.
What is the worst episode of TOS for you? The one that you just don't like watching? For me, I think it is the Alternative Factor. I hate that episode. It's really boring. I don't like watching it. It sucks.
I just put out last week my
best facial hair.
Yeah, I literally just put out the video last week of best and worst TOS episodes, and Alternative Factor I think was number 3 on my 3 from the bottom. But my worst that is just it can go fuck itself is And the Children Shall Lead. That should not even be an episode.
That is a really bad episode. When they were like going through the ice cream choices, I hated it.
That's the best part of the episode, bro.
I think Plato's Stepchildren without question.
When they made Captain Kirk like get on the fucking floor and neigh like a horse. When I saw that for the first time, I actually died laughing.
Yes,
that was hilarious.
Yes, it looked like humiliating for all the actors involved. Also, I hate that it's used as this tent pole of progress when the context of the episode eliminates that entirely. Like they're 2 people forced by mind control to assault each other, essentially. That's not progressive whatsoever. Like, let's stop putting this thing on a pedestal, okay?
That episode feels like it was written by American Dad writers or something. Like,
yeah. I mean, I still gotta kind of throw it to Spock's brain because this franchise has asked me to believe a lot. But the idea of a sentient being not only somehow being able to exist without its brain, but then later in the episode actually participate in the surgery of putting its own brain back in. No, sorry, you lost me.
Yes. And Spock's brain is one of those things where Trek has already proven that it has the potential to balance its more B-movie stylings with thoughtful stories. And the fact that they are doing that ridiculous of a camp tale at that point in the series, it shows a real lack of confidence and a lack of ability to come up with more interesting stories. It's a shame on the series as far as I'm concerned.
On the other side of the episode that we're talking about now, though, I love her
Oh, right.
outfit. Aside from that, this episode is worthless.
Yeah, it does look like it's could be wearable after the fact. Like, it doesn't look like it's about to fall apart, and it doesn't look like it was put together in 2 seconds.
Dustin, do you like the Paradise Syndrome? That's the one where
That's the one with the Native Americans.
That's
no.
where Kirk becomes.
Do you like that? Because I've literally never met anybody that likes that episode.
Why? It's actually good though.
Why? It's like the third or fourth most culturally appropriating episode of the entire franchise. I mean, for a start.
It's not, I don't like it because it's accurate portrayal of Native Americans. I think I like it
obviously.
It's fucking hilarious. It's fucking hilarious.
Hey, everybody ease up on the youngin, okay?
What part is hilarious, though? I am Kirk. Yeah, I mean, sure.
He becomes like a chieftain of a Native American group of aliens.
They're human.
And also, I think I kind of do vibe with the fact he's like, man, if I could just get away from this starship and grill in these teepees for the rest of my life and just sit here and gaze across this landscape, that would be way better than what I'm doing.
There is an absurdity to it that lends itself to being entertaining here and there. It's just the red face trope, all of these things that you have to sort of like throw in the trash in order to be entertained by it is just too much.
Gannon, do you like sit around and watch John Wayne movies and do that too? Or are you like, boy, I wish I could be a John Wayne cowboy?
I don't like old Western
throw this
stuff.
all the way, get out there, be in the desert, and look at all the desert.
I can only watch old science fiction. I can't do Westerns.
Fair enough. But what was going on in that writer's room? Okay, here's what we're going to do, okay? So Kirk's going to get amnesia. He's going to go appropriate some Native American culture. He's going to play white savior for a while.
He's going to go steal somebody's bitch.
Get a woman pregnant. Then he's going to get a woman pregnant, yell at the sky for a little bit. She's going to die as well as the baby, and we'll never hear from them again.
Now, Scott,
does the baby dies too? I thought the baby lived.
No, she died before
he
giving
died,
birth.
so the baby died by extension.
Forgot about that part. That's pretty dark.
Never seen or heard from again.
That's one of the I don't know if it's the only, but it is at least one of the only TOS episodes with like where they keep the video going and keep the scene going with the credits. They don't cut to the
like the exterior.
All right, so we're getting away from this.
Sorry.
There's just a couple of things, and we actually touched on one of them. From this episode, Barbara Babcock was also in Plato's Stepchildren. I knew that. What I didn't know is that she did a pile of voices in TOS also, including Gary Seven's cat Isis, the like weird Mewy. Not she didn't play the like female version of her, just the voice, and also Gary Seven's computer, and the mother of Trelane from the Squire of Gothos, and the Zatar people from Lights of Zatar.
That's also pretty.
Barbara Babcock did a ton of work on TOS.
I watched the Futurama episode where no fan has gone before recently, and it would have been so cool if they could have gotten Barbara Babcock to do the mother of the alien and how she talks down to him. He's not a child, he's 37. Scott knows what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, diversion.
So aside from that, just had one more question about this episode. what is actually the moral message? Because I feel like whatever it's supposed to be has just been lost in the plot.
The moral message is that war is bad, but also it's so shrouded in bad faith politics throughout the whole episode that I think we lose a lot of touch in that war is bad, because it almost feels like a colonialist like parable of some sort. Like they go in and bring like liberal democracy quote to these people. And it feels it, the writer even said it was a Vietnam parable when they wrote it. So I think there's a lot of like stuff going on in it about how the people who are supposedly bringing us peace aren't necessarily doing it out out of the greater good. They're doing it for their own benefit, and I think the unspoken actions that go on through this episode pertain to that.
I think the moral of the story is that the internet is for pornography and not war. If you're going to
Make porn, not
install-
war.
Yes. But honestly, I think the moral of it is it's easy to engage in large scale genocide when you're not having FaceTime with the people that you're murdering. It's easy when it's just numbers on a spreadsheet or just a number in a newspaper or a magazine to disconnect yourself emotionally. But when you're face to face with it, you're having to process and deal with the consequences of those actions. And the depersonal, the sort of disconnection there is something to be cautious of. And I think it's incredibly relevant.
That feeds into the Vietnam stuff about it too, because Vietnam was one of the first wars that Americans were able to view on live TV compared to what was happening in years past. People were starting to see the absolute toll American soldiers were taking on communities that weren't actually violent towards them on any level. And people we're starting to look at the numbers coming out from this and really questioning whether anything about this was justified. So this is I guess they probably started producing this within the first year of the war. I don't think they could see how bad it was going to get. Like it almost feels quaint a little bit quaint when you compare it to what was happening with Vietnam.
Also, like the channel of information is microscopic. Like it's just these couple of guys that tell you, okay, we've been hit here, so we got to get these people. There's a lot of trust, and they've consolidated trust in just a few people. I mean, this is not this cost of peace is just handing over the truth to a couple people, and they can just kind of tell you whenever, whatever, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the moral was supposed to be because I feel like this is just so poorly written. But the takeaway that I get is if you're going to do war, go all the way.
Yeah, if you're going to do war, do it the right way, Captain Kirk's way, or just don't do it at all.
I just imagine him with a big old smirk spinning around in that chair when you said that.
All right. Let's give this an out of 10 ranking. I was going to go a 4, and I'm going to go 4.5, all for that half point to Scotty, because he really does kill it in the big chair in this one.
I'll give it a 7.5. It's a really entertaining episode for me. It's one of my favorites.
I would give it an 8. I think the messaging is somewhat ambiguous, and I think that's by design. And I kind of like that you can pull a few things out of this, but that's not to me, a shortfall of the writing so much as like how many scenarios this could apply to. I think it's really beautifully done. I think the stranglehold of this culture, but this government on this planet is really interesting. Yeah, 8.
I can give you a solid 7 for a muddled message and decent enough execution. And I don't know if it's just like the fact that I'm watching a remastered version, but like that map painting when they first come down in mini art looks really nice.
Yeah.
It is part of the remastered.
Yeah, figured.
I want to give it an 8, but I'm also going to factor in the idea, like, I would imagine some of the scores here aren't factoring in how progressive it must have seemed for sci-fi television to be tackling this amount of heavy war and different types of subject matter for science fiction in the 60s. So I think that factors in a lot on my rating, because as far as first season Star Trek episodes go, it's definitely one of the better, because it gives you such heavy, like, subject matter to sort through. And it also creates a lot of interesting ambiguity that, while that doesn't necessarily create resolution for everything at the end of the episode, it still gives you a lot to chew over and think on. And I think that's a plus for this episode and for TOS in general when they can pull it off. I also think, like, it really relates well to Vietnam, the Vietnam experience, and it looks more laughable today because of its effects and stuff, but I think its effects at the time are some of the better examples of Trek trying to grow out of its B movie roots, out of its serial roots in older science fiction, and I find that contrast interesting.
Rock on. Any final thoughts on this episode? We done said it all.
Yeah.
All right. So next week we are going to be talking some disco. We're going to talk about what we've liked about what disco has been, what we haven't liked, what we think it needs from a season 5. And thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Robbie, for coming up with this topic this week. I think I find it interesting that I'm the low man on the totem pole by a lot. I'm usually much higher on the ratings than people. So cool. All right. Well, we'll come back next week. We'll do it again. And until then, live long